Thank you for being here. I know it was some really not very pleasant weather to have to drive through to get here, so glad to see everybody. I'm sure we'll see Commissioner Gerard shortly. So is there any public comment before we get started? Okay, seeing none. Our first action item is to review the minutes. Any suggestions, changes, move for approval?
So moved.
To move for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great. Moving ahead, committee officers. We will take nominations for chair and vice chair of the planning committee. Do we want to hear nominations for the chair? I think current.
Mr. Welch.
Commissioner Welch, do you accept the nomination?
On the condition that there's coffee.
It's on its way.
At a time certain. I'm just kidding. I couldn't resist that.
I second
Sure.
the nomination.
Sure. Thank you.
Great. We're all in favor?
Aye.
Terrific. Great choice. Nomination for vice chair. It's a great opportunity to bring new people along.
I return the favor to Mr. Dyken.
Do you
Great.
accept?
Sure.
Second.
That was it.
Great. Any others? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Terrific. Okay. So Commissioner Welch will start chairing the next meeting?
That would be great.
Okay. Great. Strategic Communication Plan from Cindy Raskin-Schmidt.
Good morning.
Good morning, committee members. My name is Cindy Raskin-Schmidt. I'm the Director of Communications and Marketing here at PSTA. I'm going to talk to you today about our Strategic Communications and Public Relations Plan. So first, just talk a little bit about why we create a communications plan. There's a lot of different things that go into the plan. We look at what our situation is. We look at who our audiences we're going to be speaking to. It's an opportunity for us to outline some ideas about things that we want to do and new and ongoing initiatives that we want to share with the public. As I go through this, I just want to point out a lot of the things you're going to see here are things we're already doing, communications that we're already participating in the community to tell the public about PSTA and to gather information back from them. Our situation, PSTA is moving forward. We're wanting to show the public that we deliver value. We transport people to work and school, allowing youth and seniors a measure of independence. And we're looking at making some service changes that we need to do while still being mindful of our customer-oriented goal with the Path Forward plan. And we want to reassure the public that we have strong leadership in place. Our target audience for this communications plan is really threefold. We're wanting to talk to riders, taxpayers, and the community in all of our efforts. And our key messaging is that PSTA delivers value to these three groups of people. Under each of these headings, we have a number of initiatives that we are already doing and we are planning on implementing over the next few months. And I'll just go through those by group. First is customers. We're starting town hall transit center meetings. It'll be at the transit center. The first one will be Friday next week. We'll be sending an invitation for anybody that would like to participate in that. And it's an opportunity for Brad to go to the terminal and talk with riders. So riders will be able to come up and talk to him, ask him questions. They'll share information and learn about what it is that the riders are concerned about. We also have been doing some customer satisfaction surveying, and we'll be sharing the results of those surveys with you. And we're going to work on what we're going to call Operation Customer Service. We're going to look at things like on-hold time for our call center and look for opportunities to improve that, to improve the customer experience. Williams Park Transfer Hub, of course, is a big deal. That's happening soon, and that's for riders. Incremental service expansion, and the North County fall service changes, which will have a public engagement component to that as well as we go out, planning department goes out and starts working on the changes for the rest of the system redesign. For our taxpayers, we're looking at creating a BRT advisory group. It'll include business leaders along the corridor and other interested parties that are stakeholders to help us advise the project as we move forward. We're also looking at an opportunity for us to engage some other business leaders in some sort of an advisory capacity to work with Brad about business issues in the community that relate to public transit. We're also going to share benchmarking results. We're members of the American Bus Benchmarking Group, where we compare our operating statistics to other transit systems of a similar size, so we can see how we're doing in comparison with others. And then we're also working on putting together some partnerships with alternative transportation providers. For example, the Uber and taxi service that's going to be coming up in February. And the third group is delivering value to the community and the community stakeholders. So we're going to host a job fair where we'll have people come in here and we can tell them about what kind of jobs we offer at PSTA, and also invite other municipalities to come in and join us as well. We're going to expand our UPass program. I have a more detailed slide about that a little bit later. We're going to coordinate with the MPO and the MPO priorities. And we have a bus stop program where we partner with the municipalities to help improve things like shelters and benches in partnership with their corridor plans and their improvement plans in their communities. Now, these are all things that we are looking towards doing, and there's a number of different things that will go along with those. First and foremost is market research. It's really important that we always go out to the community and ask the community what they think about PSTA overall, separate from a public engagement effort, which we always do as part of our service changes. So that's kind of separate planning, the public engagement piece that goes along with BRT or goes along with North County Service or Williams Park, a separate public engagement plan for that. But our overall market research is looking at how is PSTA perceived in the community and where are some places that we need to work on. We'll also do some internal market research with our employees. As part of that market research, kind of as a follow-up, we'll look at a brand audit. Those two kind of go together, the market research and the brand audit. We're going to look at the PSTA brand overall, going past not just the logo and the stripe on the bus, but really holistic view of the whole brand and see how does the community perceive that? What do they think about that? It's another opportunity for us to listen to the public and see what they think about us. And then if there's places within that brand that we need to look at adjusting a little bit, we'll come up with a really strong, comprehensive brand plan. Content development is really important. It's important for us to listen to riders, find the really great stories that we want to tell, and share those into the public. That helps the public see why public transit is important to the community. So telling those stories and finding those really great people who have those stories, we feel, helps people make a connection and see why it's so important, and see why we're delivering value to that community. We're going to maximize our use of digital media. We already do this quite a bit. We have a really strong social media plan, and we're going to expand that even more. We're looking at ways to cross-promote with other online entities. You know, we have an event that we have bus service go to. We'll tag that event to make sure that we're getting good relationship building online social media with local businesses and areas. We're also going to work on redesigning our website to try to make it easier for people to find the information that they want and need, and make it easier for us to deliver messages to them as well. We have a very strong proactive media approach. We have Ashley, who I think most of you have met, who's our media liaison. She's working really hard to look for stories that can be strongly developed and then presented to reporters to get them more interested and more engaged in what we're doing so they can go out to the public and help us tell those stories, showing again how we're delivering value. We're going to work on developing some partnerships with the local communication colleges, and then also expand our joint press releases with HART wherever that's appropriate. Community event cross-promotion is a really fun one. We're looking at places where we have current bus service that goes by places where there are large crowd events. An example is the Jazz Holiday or the Central Avenue Solstice event, and we're promoting that service so that people that might not ordinarily think about riding the bus can ride the bus for the first time, going to a fun event. It'll be a great experience for them. They can see how nice our buses are and our drivers and our passengers and try the free Wi-Fi. And then once they've had a positive experience in that kind of area, then hopefully they'll come and ride again. The corporate UPass program. The UPass program that we have today is with mostly colleges and also the city of St. Petersburg and micro school in St. Petersburg. We're going to expand that to a corporate program so we can include businesses. So we're going to reach out to employers and ask them to come on board. It's a great benefit they can provide for their employees, where they pay us a set flat rate, and then their employees all ride for free just by showing their employee ID card. So this is a great way to show value to our community and to our taxpayers that we're providing ways for people to get to work. In stakeholder engagement, we're going to talk to employees. We're going to bring back our quarterly newsletter we used to have several years ago, so we can make sure employees are staying on top of the projects and things that we're working on, give them an avenue to communicate with us as well. And we are going to try to communicate better with the board and community leaders. Brad does his Friday email where he updates all of you about what's going on. And then we've added the YouTube videos in every other week or so into the mix to keep things interesting. And we are also bi-weekly sharing news clips with you so you can see the positive press that PSTA is getting. And we're also working on getting some national press as well. And lastly, passenger and public information. The marketing group, we're a small group, but we create some great materials. Brochures, maps, flyers, posters, all of those sorts of things. Our social media, our website, any of the creative pieces, we want to make sure that those are really strong, high quality, so that any messaging that we are trying to communicate out to the public is done well. So that is the conclusion of my particular presentation. I just want to highlight a lot of these things we're already doing. We try to find lots of opportunities to listen to the public, and then share out to them, remind the whole world, not just our riders, but the whole world, why it is that PSTA is so important and why we deliver and how we deliver value to our riders, our taxpayers, and our community. If you all have any questions.
All right, thanks, Cindy. That was a great, very thorough presentation. I'm sure we have some good questions for Commissioner Welsh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first one, I want to know how many takes does it take Brad for the YouTube video? Or is that one take?
The most I think was
First take.
Three.
They're well done.
Thank you.
You could edit it.
I would.
Make it easy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, Ashley is a very good video editor. She does a great job.
I have a vision that some of you are going to star in my videos
soon,
so just get ready.
Great presentation. Question on the social media aspect of it. Does our previous surveying tell us what percentage of our riders have access to social media, even just smartphone access? Have we ever asked that question?
You know, we haven't asked that question, but anecdotally, we've seen over the years, this really great measure of who has smartphones is lost and found. So the number of phones that are smartphones and lost and found, you don't get many flip phones anymore. Okay. They're pretty much mostly smartphones. So we haven't asked the question, but we kind of know the answer.
I think it'd be a good question to ask.
I agree.
You know, we're going to target so much folks that have access.
Definitely.
When was our last web redesign? Has it been improved?
Yep. We try to make improvements. We try to make small improvements when we find them, kind of tweak it, make it better. But what we're really going to look at this time is kind of a
total makeover?
A more of a whole makeover,
okay.
Yeah. I don't know how long it's been, but it's been a while since we had a full.
It's been incremental, but you're talking total.
Yeah.
What survey method are we using?
You know, we haven't determined that yet. We're going to be, we're going out to bid to have a marketing firm join us as the agency of record that had, and one of the requirements will be that they have market research experience. So that's something that we will explore with them at that time. We'll start working on the list of questions now, including things like social media and phone access. And then they'll help us determine, they're the experts of that, they'll help us determine the best. In the past, we've done telephone surveys. We've had a firm come in and do telephone surveys of non-riders. And then that was always done in conjunction with onboard surveys as well. We've been doing lots of onboard surveying recently as part of the customer service initiative. So I think we would kind of try to target mostly, not completely all, but try to target non-riders to try to get other community impression of PSTA.
Okay. And Madam Chair, my last question. We started talking about this in another meeting, but decided it wasn't the right meeting. On the UPass, which we recently expanded to P-Tech, which I think is technically a part of Pinellas County Schools.
It is.
So strategically, are we trying to roll that out to, high school students, for example, which has been something we've talked about over the
years, there has been some pushback from the school board, but is that the path that we're leading down to looking at high schools?
I hope so. And at the PTEC event on Monday, I cornered the 2 school board members and some of the staff there to try to get those discussions going again about they seem to have interest in what they told me was in the adult learning programs that I maybe run through PTEC. I'm not sure. And I said, great, and we'd like to talk to you about maybe high school.
I think the resistance before is we were talking about basically taking over their transportation function. This is different. This is augmenting it for the kind of things that you just described. So, thank you.
Okay. I have a question and something to add to what you were saying, Ken. The state representative, not Delaware, has a bill right now. You're familiar with it?
No.
That he's trying to push that all of our schools start having a class in what happens after you graduate, learning different social services things and things like that. And so what we wanted to talk to him about was it would certainly be nice if the kids learned how to ride a bus before they got out of school so that they could actually go to the job or interview for a job or learn how to. So we would like to talk to Chris Labella about that and being a part of that before it gets started. So yes, that would help. That would be an inroad into the school system, making that course a part of what they're going to train for if that legislation passes. At any rate, no matter how it works out, at least the schools would know that we're there and we're ready and we can train these kids and teach them how to use a bus. And my question, Cindy, is there any way that we can target public housing? The public housing units that I've talked to say, yeah, but they don't know how to ride the bus, so they don't go. And I know from having worked before with Jordan Park and quite a few others that they don't. That if they don't know it, they don't trust it, and they don't do it. They will sit at home before they'll venture out the door and go get on the bus. That's not just my elderly. That's all of the kids and the working age adults. I can't get the job because I can't go. But there's a bus out there. I don't know about the bus. So we have a target. We just don't know how to get them together and say, here it is, here's how you do it.
We have, many of you probably have met Juan Ludian. He's like amazing travel trainer. He makes bus riding and navigating the system and reading the schedule fun for people, and they want to go and get excited about going on the bus. So I'm not sure that we've specifically targeted the public housing units with his outreach efforts. He does go out and do travel training. He does one-on-one, and he does group presentations of how to ride the bus as part of his regular duties, and we'll definitely add those public housing areas to his rounds. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I'm just one thing on the public schools. Somehow the other day I was talking to Neil Brickfield, who used to be on the commission, and he's now with the Police Benefit League or something like that. Yeah, and he was saying that he would like to get the public schools on this also. They're apparently very interested in doing that. And he said, you know, what can you do? And I said, well, there's got to be people who want to do this. So it's something that a lot of people want to do. So.
Yeah, I think as Commissioner Walsh accurately noted, in my experience, and I've had some experience with talking with the school district about this, and threats to the yellow bus transportation system are where this is sort of hit a roadblock. But if this is viewed as a supplemental service to providing transportation to all, maybe not not replacing the yellow school bus trip to school in the morning, then I think we have a good opportunity.
One of the problems that Neil is having and all of us have, at some point, it used to be that the yellow bus would drop the kids off at their job, and then something changed. And so now the yellow bus can't go to Boys and Girls Club or PAL or anywhere else. The yellow bus can only drop you off where it picks you up. Therefore, it caused Boys and Girls Club lost 1,000 kids in 1 year from their services because they couldn't get there after school.
So I think, are you finished?
Yes.
So I think in context of this discussion, what's really helpful and what I'm hearing is that as we bring these policies together, these are really positive stories to tell about PSTA. And just last week, there was a great event that we did at PTEC and announcing the UPass program at PTEC. And we had 3 or 4 speakers, but it may have been 4, but who started off the event talking about how much the ability to use the PSTA buses to get to school, what that meant to them. And these were speakers who had really compelling testimonies of people who were taking care of elderly people at home, someone who had been in a serious car accident and could no longer drive. And it really made me so proud to be part of PSTA and part of this program of delivering this service. So I think that's what we ought to be, yelling from the rooftops, because it's a personal view. It really puts the writers in the middle of the story. And I think it's really what kind of humanizes and helps people understand the role that we play to the community.
Of course, Cindy. We went through this before in the Finance Committee, and we covered this. I just want to bring out a couple of things that I thought was important about this. And I did want to say before that this is a big effort that you put together, and I appreciate it. When we talk about the target audience in this group, we have just about everybody. We have the customers, the taxpayers, and the community leaders. And my impression on this, when we're talking about how we want to be important to these people, is that we should focus primarily on the Pinellas County taxpayers, so that when we get something done, we want to get it to their attention. If you recall, in our last meeting, there was a lady from, I think, bus 58 or something, who had she had a presentation from all the people that were on her bus that said, she had this thing that she gave to us. I don't know if you remember it, but we had it duplicated. And if you go through it, you've got 100 people, and about 75 of them are talking about how they use the bus to go to work. Very, very important. So that is one of the things that I think we have to maybe particularly emphasize when we're talking to people about how good we are, because this is how people get to work. So when we're doing this, we should be talking to the taxpayers so that they understand what we're trying to do. A couple of other things. Getting into market research. I think it's a wonderful idea that we're going to do some market research. I was saying earlier that when you do market research, what you want to know is basically a confirmation. So you go into it, you say, what happens if we see A, B, C, D, E. What are we going to do when we see them? So that your market research basically confirms what may be out there that you've already anticipated. And so we got to be able to figure, when we do this, what are we going to do? So we could do the market research and we'll find people who don't use the bus, say, well, I don't use it because I don't need it, or who knows. But the idea is that when we find these people, what are we going to say to them in order to make them see what we are doing as a valuable thing? And so that basically, once we've done the research, we do something for it, and then we go back with the research and see if we were successful. We do it should be done a second time to find out if we're actually doing what we planned. When we get into the content development, which we were talking about before, with the storytelling and so forth, this should be, again, what we should be talking about is people getting to work, people doing this. And where are we going to do it? We want to do it for the public that we're concerned with. Are we going to put this in, are we going to put it in the back of the bus? Are we going to put it on billboards? Where are we going to do it so that it really gets out to people who understand this is what we're contributing? And it should get out to these people. Basically, that was yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was raised.
You know, you had said that before about how are we going to deliver that message, and I had intended to mention that as part of my presentation. I have a really many page document that details all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Things like, okay, so we have the content development, then what do we do with it? So this presentation was intended to give you the kind of the strategy and not down deep in the details, but I plan to update that document and have it available for all of you to look at, hopefully by the end of next week. So you'll see that information in the plan.
So we got to get to these people and really get a focus on.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so I have, each individual item kind of ends up with its own little marketing plan. What is it? What is the focus of this particular thing we're trying to do? Which group are we trying to target? What are the elements? What are our tactics? What are the things we're going to do to get that content out there? So I have all that in there. It's a kind of a living document as things change throughout the year, and as a result of the market research, I think I know what the market research is going to say, but but if I'm wrong, then we'll reevaluate it and we'll look at changing the strategic plan to make sure we're moving in the correct direction.
Okay. And we can go back and retest it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So this is an action item. So
Okay, so I had a couple of comments too. I wanted to say that I'm starting to see a little bit of how you guys are already starting to implement this. I really like the video updates. I think that's much more compelling than just always seeing written material. And there've been a couple of the updates to the board I would have liked to have shared on social media, but it was clear that the audience was the board of directors. So there was a little bit of I don't know how well it would have translated to a general audience, but just something to keep in mind. I think the short 3 or 4 minute videos are great. It also, I think, reflects a certain direction that social media is trending in. As we see Facebook, it now has an allowance for a live feed. We don't know what's going to happen yet with Twitter and Periscope and Instagram, but all of those are platforms or channels that definitely favor videos and images, and which kind of reminds me of a little of some feedback. I love the idea that we have town halls as one of our tactics. I'd like to see us maybe get away from the PowerPoint presentations that have too many slides. If we do have to do a PowerPoint presentation, limit the slides, and the slides should be supporting what we're saying and not kind of a crutch to get the presentation, if you know what I mean. I think it makes sense for committees and PSTA meetings to have detailed PowerPoint slides to get through a lot of detailed information, but something that's facing a more public general audience, maybe we should go a little bit easier on people with policy. Vice Chair. I think it's a good point that you made about the audiences. I think it's just, and it sounds like you're already very well aware of this, but you know, when we're talking to like a urban audience versus a suburban audience, they see and value and interpret mass transit in totally different ways. And sometimes we don't always have the choice of how we speak to those. You know, sometimes everybody's in the same room, but I just think it's something strategic we need to be aware of. And I think talking about connecting people to jobs and the value that provides is a universal message, because you're speaking directly to our ridership, and we're speaking to people who may not use PSTA buses themselves, but they can certainly see the big picture of where it's a value to our economic development. So the action item is to recommend this plan, consideration of
communication plan to the PSTA board.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy.
Well done.
Oh, I forgot to.
He brought those up to Mines.
Okay.
He was able to be there.
Okay, so for those of you who see Bill Johnson's note, and he was available earlier during the Finance Committee and made his feedback known for the record. Okay, so our next item on the agenda, Heather Sobush, the Central Avenue BRT Action Plan.
Hi, good morning. I'm excited to be here today to talk to you a little bit about how we are moving forward with the Central Avenue Bus Rapid Transit project. As you know, we recently received an announcement from FDOT that they will be contributing $500,000 towards the project development phase. PSTA will commit the remaining $200,000 in funding needed for the project development study. We also have received support from numerous agencies, including the City of St. Petersburg, which will be dedicating a lane for the service to utilize, and that will allow us to move forward in that federal process and seek federal funding. Right now, we are working with the MPO to amend their cost-feasible long-range transportation plan to include the project. Those of you on the MPO will see that coming to the board in February. It'll be going through the MPO committees in January. We are also drafting a letter requesting entry into project development, which we will review with our federal government affairs team, Van Spoyeg, and then also with the Federal Transit Administration. We actually have a meeting in early February with Region 4 to review our letter and our request. We are also developing with our consultant a scope of work for the project development study. This is important as it will come back to you all, that we will bring the scope to you next month for review and for recommendation for the board to approve. And then finally, we are working to refine our public outreach plan, which I'll talk a little bit more about at the end of this presentation. Coming up in the spring, you will begin to see our public engagement, and this will be important because it will help us to refine and reduce the number of alternatives, which will allow us to contain costs in the study, and then also streamline the project as we enter into the environmental review phase. In the summer, you will begin to see our heavy technical work, and this is where we'll be engaging the consultant to provide us with the details that we will need to give to FTA. We will start looking at the design concepts, the project elements, and then do the environmental analysis. And then in 2017, we will be finalizing all that consultant work and preparing the documentation for the environmental, and then also to allow us to submit a package to the Federal Transit Administration requesting that the project be included in the fiscal year 19 budget. And then, as mentioned earlier, public engagement will be occurring throughout this project. Of note is that early on, as I mentioned before, we will be meeting with stakeholders, particularly on the beaches, the business community, business owners in neighborhoods along the corridor. We will have some one-on-one meetings. We will also hold public forums at each phase of the project, and then we will have a stakeholder group where we can bring specific topics for their comments and for them to help us in the decision-making process. And then finally, we will have our normal print and web communication that we do ongoing at PSTA and then for specific projects. So that is the update I have for you today, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those now.
Questions?
Yes, ma'am. At what point will the discussion about the lane modification happen? Either, I guess, at council or just a community conversation?
Well, we did receive a letter of intent from the city to allow us to utilize the lane, but during the summer, we will really be doing that technical work to look at the alternatives a little more, to look at some of those design concepts, those issues that have come up before, like right or left side boarding, utilization of the lane, any kind of signalization type discussions. So that will begin in the summer and go through, I would say, fall and winter into 2016.
Some of those features we will have to have as part of the project in order to be eligible for the federal dollars. And the city understands that, and that's why their support letters, both from the mayor and from the council, both mention the use of that lane. City staff has asked us for additional traffic analysis, which is incumbent upon us during the project.
So at this point, it's just a lane. We haven't specified which lane.
Exactly.
Okay. So just a lane. Can you go back to slide 3? Yeah. So this discussion encompasses all the routes that we are looking at, the black, purple, green, and yellow. All of that is included in these.
Correct. That's in the alternatives refinement.
Okay.
Years ago, when we had done an alternatives analysis for this, we had the pretty known corridor between downtown and about the black line right there was pretty agreed upon. But there were some alternatives as to which beach the service would ultimately go to, so we still need to revisit that and refine that.
So it will not be all 3 of those colored?
No,
It will
no,
be
one.
of them?
Correct.
Okay. And how, so all those communities involved in the conversation?
Yes.
And what will be the deciding factor between the purple, green, and yellow?
We will have some evaluation criteria to look at those corridors. What did you say?
What did you say?
Which mayor we like best? No.
No, you didn't.
No, part of the process would look at some evaluation criteria, kind of some high level, maybe at first some fatal flaw analysis, and also public outreach to look at which would be the most appropriate alternative. And we may carry forward too into the environmental review.
And it comes down to, the whole FTA process is about picking your community's preferred alternative and the trade-offs that you're willing to make. And one of these costs more than the others, So is that an important factor to the community? One of them hits, a more strategic area than the others. Is that the most important thing? And the FTA, it doesn't matter. What matters is that the community agrees on what the solution is.
Is future expansion, say we pick one of the lines, is future expansion to one or both of the other 2 a possibility?
Well, yes, but then we'd forego all the other things we have throughout the county that we would want to do. So,
of course, given funding, but
if you wanted to have a different operating plan, it changes your entire project. But the answer to everything is, can you? Sure, yes, you can.
if there's a strong second. We said the same thing with the rail portion of the Green Line, that expansion to, say, South St. Pete or the northern part of the county could be an option for the future, but the first part had to be implemented and performed.
Yes, this would not be an extension. This would be an entirely different service.
Yeah.
A layered service. Yes.
Okay, I'm way ahead of myself, but
Yeah.
just trying to anticipate questions.
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, sure. Commissioner Johnson.
I was just wondering, I think that the purple and wherever they are, the beaches, there are some beaches that are not part of PSTA. There are other beaches that are paying a set amount. There are some beaches that don't want to give up ad valorem taxes. Are we going to try to work with that prior to providing them with services? I mean, it's going to cost money to do this. So, I mean, is that a lollipop to hang out there?
I think we'll have to look at that in the review of those alternatives. We will have to look at that as part of that review.
Yeah, I was just want to point out, on the one on the top, the purple one, we talked about this earlier, that is currently done by 18 and 68. That's something that's already done. And the one on the bottom, the yellow one, is something that's done by 90 and CAT. So the only one that really isn't done is the green one. So, and the top two, I think we said last time we'd save 20% of the time doing it. So two of them are already done, and the third is maybe we could get some money for that. We've got these done half already. No, they're not BRT, but they'll take about 20% more than a BRT, but it's there already.
We do have local service and a connection, but with the BRT, we're looking to expand our market and people served and the type of service we provide. So,
real quick, being a St. Pete City Council member, there's that eastern part of the route along Central Avenue, a corridor. There's a number of very engaged business district associations, neighborhood associations that have been, I think, really pushing for us to consider the left side loading. But when I look at the purple line and the yellow line as potential options, just in terms of managing expectations and managing discussions, it seems to me that if we did go with the purple or the yellow options, then it seems like left loading becomes a very difficult issue on those routes. So is that accurate? Because I think sometimes when you're talking to certain groups, they just think of Central Avenue and don't realize that the BRT lane, the BRT route, will be going along other areas where that's just not going to work. Is that?
Accurate.
yes.
Okay. Okay.
And I just wanted to note, as I mentioned, that stakeholder group, we were going to bring specific topics like that to delve into the details of some of that decision making.
Okay, great.
I just wanted to inquire about I guess it's the airport express routes. Is that the dedicated or the shoulder? Is it 275 or what is that under?
Dash
Dash lines.
I guess I pulled an old map.
Airport Express route.
Yeah, that's what I see that.
That's a proposed route in our vision plan.
Okay.
And we have.
It has nothing to do with this project.
That's not
I didn't
TBS?
think so.
Is that TBS?
That is the bus on shoulder project
Right,
that
okay.
DOT is engaging in right now. But it's part of a bigger regional connection system that we would have with the county. So, because you're just seeing the portion of the county right here, what would be on that map if you pulled out would be the Clearwater Beach to the airport as well as coming down from North County.
Just thought I was missing something.
No, doesn't mean anything.
Sorry about that.
The PD letter to FTA, when will we get some feedback from that? Is there, when will we get the feedback?
We're drafting it right now. We'll send it up to them a week before we go meet with them.
Okay.
And our meeting is set for February 4th.
Great.
And then they have a congressionally mandated 45-day turnaround.
When we submit it officially, yes.
So then when we go up again into Washington, D.C. in March, we maybe have positive, they can tell us that they've just approved it.
Thank you.
Moving right along, Mr. Miller and our guest Whit Blanton.
Yes.
Hi, Whit.
Thank you. Those of you, all of you probably have met Whit Blanton, the executive director of the Nelson PO. According to his board chair, Mr. Kennedy, we believe this is the first ever joint PSTA and MPO board meeting coming up next Friday here at PSTA. And we're very excited about that opportunity. As you know, one of our goals as part of the Path Forward Strategic Plan is to operate in more of a partnership mode with all of our partners, and top center is the Nelson PO, since they are the designated transportation planning organization for the region. So you have a draft agenda, and I'll just call on Whit to maybe kind of walk through that agenda and sort of the goals of the meeting.
Thanks, Brad, and welcome everybody. It's great to be here. Cassandra and I have been working on this agenda, so it's a little bit of a joint effort. And to say this is long anticipated and long overdue is an understatement. I can remember when I was PSTA's consultant and the MPO's consultant back in the 90s, I felt like I was a peace emissary between Roger Sweeney and Brian Smith and different planning philosophies of how we do transit planning. I've been working really hard to break down any kind of barriers that we may have between how the MPO plans transportation and how PSTA plans transportation, because we're all in the transportation game. And as we talked also, we have a third component involved with the invitation of the MPO and Canals Planning Council. We also have a land use responsibility. And I had an interesting conversation the other day with the county on a program they're looking at in terms of transfer of development rights with the assistant county administrator and senior planning staff. And we were talking about incentivizing transfer of development rights, density in different places. And I said, well, everything's an incentive, nothing's an incentive. And we really need to make sure that we sharpen our land use tools so that we encourage and incentivize density where it's appropriate around transit lines, transit hubs, and around transport points, and where we encourage mixed use as well in those areas. And so the land use aspect of our agency has an important role to play there, and I don't want that to be overlooked. This isn't just about prioritization. It's also about how we align our planning processes and our tools and our criteria. The agenda that we put together really starts out with a little bit of a discussion of what the meeting objectives are, and we'd really like this to be a foundational meeting that might be the one that we do every year, every couple of years, but I'd like this to be a starting point. And we're not necessarily going to agree on everything at this meeting, but hopefully we'll have enough direction at the staff level to bring back to you some very specific changes in our respective planning processes to show this better alignment. And I think the issue has always been that we have been very excellent planning partners, and there are a lot of great examples that we will show at the workshop. But as far as I'm aware, the MPO has not spent one dime on capital projects or implementation of PSTA projects. And that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me and a lot of other folks. So the objectives, we start with, I think, two chairs having an opportunity to express their shared objectives at the meeting, and then maybe a little bit of time if others want to reinforce or add to those objectives. And then I will spend a little time walking through the federally mandated roles and responsibilities, because there are certain things that, such as Central Avenue BRT and other types of major investment type projects that the MPO is required to sign off on and prioritize in order to get federal funding. And there are roles and responsibilities that are shared that can be led by either PSTA or MPO, but we have to be working in collaboration on those items. And then there are other items that are clearly PSTA responsibilities or clearly MPO responsibilities. So we'll talk a little bit about what the regulatory and legal context is for that. And then we'll spend a little time talking about where we've worked well together and where we see at the staff level opportunities to work better together. And then we'll turn it over to PSTA to talk about the path forward and priorities. I think our board members on the MPO, PPC, understand that fairly well, but maybe not in enough detail. So that'll be an opportunity to highlight that. And I learned a few things just listening to the Central Avenue PRT next steps too. And then we'll come back to our staff and we'll talk about our initiatives, our emphasis areas for US 19, beach access, and the Gateway area, as well as what's coming out of the TMA leadership group for Tampa Bay, the discussion of the CSX corridor that I briefed the Board of County Commissioners about earlier this week, and a few other items. And then we will talk about our prioritization process, what we do now in terms of prioritizing transportation projects and how that is currently working and maybe how it should work. And after about a 10-minute break of context information that we'll have, we've invited Debbie Hunt from the Florida Department of Transportation. Debbie is the development, but she is Director of Development, I think is what it is, essentially, project development for DOT, and she is right below the Secretary. And Debbie is really the gatekeeper for what projects DOT is willing to support and invest in as a partner. And that's essentially the critical role in our region. So we've asked Debbie to talk about first, what are some positive examples that she's seen where our agencies have worked together and where in the region agencies are working together to actually implement and advance these kinds of joint MPO transit projects. So we hope she'll share those ideas. And then what is DOT expecting from us? How can we better align our process with what the department is looking to, and so that this district can demonstrate that they're doing the things that all the other districts around the state of Florida are doing. Because I will tell you as a consultant, having worked in Southeast Florida and in the Orlando region, those districts are extremely engaged in advancing transit projects. And they've gotten that direction from their MPOs, not just their transit agencies. So I think that's an important message for us to send. After that discussion, it's about a 15-minute conversation. We will then open it up for a much more collaborative board joint discussion. And we'll start that off with two very brief case studies of how two other regions have prioritized transportation projects jointly with the transit provider. And our current examples that we're looking at, we're still gathering a little bit of information, but we wanted one good local example in Florida, and that's going to be the MetroPlan Links example. And then we have Austin, Texas is another example, which we think has done some really good things. And they've taken down a proportionally higher share of federal discretionary dollars than a lot of other regions around the country, and they're a Sun Belt state. And I think there's some good parallels to look at, and roughly comparable in size. And hopefully what we will have is a good hour discussion of the board, 45 minutes to an hour discussion, sort of building on those points. And again, we hope it's a springboard for a larger conversation and specific direction. And just so you all know, we are entering that cycle where the MPO is now set to develop our next set of transportation priorities. And I was talking with our staff earlier, I'm kind of a believer that our long-range plan, which happens every 5 years, is the big demarcation point where we really rethink what we're doing. And it's supposed to be a continuing process. We don't blow it up, but that is a nice juncture to say, are the criteria we're using effective? Are the projects we're advancing consistent with trends and latest information? And I think what we have done is for about 20 to 25 years, we've kind of bumped along, not adjusting our prioritization process at all. And it just seems like the long-range plan is that opportunity to, kind of like you with your transit development plan, every 3 years you do a major update, and in the interim, every year it's just more of a tweak. I think our long-range plan is an opportunity for a major update on our planning process. And so we'll be entering that in the next couple of years. So it's a really good opportunity now to think back through those criteria. The other thing I'd like to just bring forward is that the MPO is mandated, and I hate saying these words because we should be doing this no matter who mandates it, but MAP 21, which is now expired, we have a new federal act, the FAST Act, mandated that we have a performance-based, outcome-driven planning process. Well, we've never implemented that. What it means is, the thing we're not doing is every project we advance into our transportation improvement program, we have to quantitatively, if possible, demonstrate how it's achieving our desired outcomes. Well, right now, all the projects we're advancing into our TIP are highway projects and a few bike projects. So you would almost argue that we have no desired outcomes for transit. And that doesn't make any sense. And I don't think our board members believe that. So we just have to bring that closer to what we really expect to see for outcomes for all of Pinellas County. And so that, and I think we've been waiting on guidance from the federal government for 2 years. And I don't think we're going to get any more specific guidance from the FAST Act. So I'm not a big believer in waiting for somebody to tell us how to do stuff. I think we should do things that make sense for us, that work for us, and that work for our partners. And so that's a big part of this conversation. What works for PSTA, what works for FDOT, and what works for the MPO. So it's an ambitious agenda, but I think if we can just have a good conversation, one that's collaborative, one that's collegial, then we'll have made some really great strides. So I'll open it up to any questions, or Cassandra or Brad want to add anything.
Cassandra, Brad?
Go for it.
Thank you. Well, he's done a great job. I'm so looking forward to this dialogue. I think it is optimistic given the number of board members and our desire to talk. It's the first time we've had that kind of group discussion. So 3 hours is kind of short for that.
We can go all day if you want. I mean, we didn't think we could get all board members together for more than 3 hours.
Well, just logistically, are you going to do this downstairs? Remember, we had the joint art meeting downstairs, kind of carved out half the room. I'm just trying to think logistically how you
We actually talked about that, trying to do it up here.
Up here?
Yeah.
We don't have that many RSVPs
Okay.
that I'm aware of. Now, that may change in the next.
So you're thinking the same kind of setup?
I mean, I'll defer to PSTA staff on that, but.
Is there 15 of us on PSTA?
Yes.
And of course, there's some crossover, but how many on MPO?
We got 13 total.
But 4 are the same people, right?
So,
So yeah, 20. The second thing is on your timing on the side. I know you're good, but I don't know if you can move time back.
do we have a little error in there?
Yeah, you were on 10 o'clock at the path forward, and then went back to 9:40.
That was probably an editing error.
Yeah, so I don't know.
It says draft at the top.
I don't know if that crunches your time more, though.
Well, I think what we're really going to try and do is keep these presentations very brief and very high level. And if there's more detail that you want, you'll have that conversation. We can come back to you.
Are you taking questions at each agenda item?
We might take a little bit, but I think that's where facilitating that is going to be really important.
Who's going to facilitate?
Yeah, we're doing.
That'll be, I'm assuming, my responsibility to keep those meetings.
You're good at that. Okay, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
I'd just like to add that if we do get in a crunch for time, one area where I'd like to really make sure that we don't, as the sand runs out of the hourglass, I'd rather see us not cut the case study examples short, because I think putting those types of examples, that what we're going to hear about with links and the Houston MPO and transportation plan, I think that would be so valuable for our MPO and PSTA. So I'd like to see that protected on the agenda.
Yeah, we'll look at that and make sure.
Okay.
We also toyed with the idea of maybe sending out some advanced questions for board members, just to sort of get the juices flowing. And so if I can get back to my desk today and think through those a little bit more. And we've already brainstormed a few questions, so we've got some out there. And I was also going to prompt Debbie Hunt as well in terms of what we expect her to say about how much time she's got. We've talked, but I think reinforcing that for email would be great.
One thought I had, I think this is it a workshop or?
It's a workshop.
This is a process that we're going through from the sort of internal PSTA perspective. We're coming off sort of a major initiative where clearly PSTA was the community's, I would say, lead voice in talking about the future of transportation. And that's changing, and it's really I think aligning more appropriately thanks to WIT coming in, and WIT very accurately describes it. The Pinellas MPO, other MPOs everywhere I've worked in, they are the lead. They take the lead in transportation planning. The Transit Authority takes the lead in implementing projects that are planned collaboratively, like the Central Avenue BRT, like Clearwater Beach, whatever. But so this is the start. So I think from my perspective, I plan sort of just to kind of, give the basic information of where PSTA stands with our different projects and our sort of fiscal realities of things. But I'm really very, very appreciative of what WIT has brought in, this idea that the MPO can really work, kind of be the umbrella organization that it's meant to be for the first time.
And I'm hoping we can hear a bit for the group about what it looks like in other areas, I mean specifically, because we're used to what we're used to, and
Yeah.
it's been, like you said, it's been 20-some years before we're met. We don't even talk to each other for the most part, because we come and ask you for money. But
That went over well.
yeah,
Right.
communication is a good thing.
Well, and the other point I've been trying to impress upon my board members is that, we share in whatever struggles you may be having budgetary, from a budgetary perspective. You share in whatever struggles we may be having in working with FDOT on advancing certain projects. And if you're having to pull back on service because you can't replace vehicles or something like that, then if our MPO board members are champions of service expansion, which they claim to be, and I think are genuinely, we're not going to be able to expand service in the ways that we want to expand service if you're cutting basic service. FTA, and I had a meeting with Sean Sullivan, who's the new TDRTC executive director for lunch yesterday, and had spent the last 7 years with FTA in the Boston region. He basically confirmed that. He said, if you're asking FTA for money and we're looking and seeing how you're pulling back on your service and you're cutting routes and you don't have the sustaining financing plan, then we're not going to do that application. So that's a really important consideration. I don't think we fully understand that connection and that linkage and that responsibility that we all have for transportation. And I've actually caught some of my board members saying things like, that's their issue or their problem. And it's all of our problem. It really is. Well, thank you. Look forward to it. It'll be fun.
Right. Sure, you agree.
I'm
Madam
looking
Chair.
forward to it.
Thank you. For the record, I do have to protest his choice of umbrella. So, just for the record.
I got a kid at both schools. So anybody feel that's fun.
Keep it going.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Our next and last item on the agenda is the Shelter Plan Phase Part 2. Chris Cochran.
Please, right before Chris begins, I'd just like to note that welcome to the Planning Committee, the City of Largo. And so I would hope Chris will highlight the new fancy bus shelters that are going into Largo. Go ahead.
Thank you all. I'm going to highlight the progress of the shelter program that was presented to you earlier last year. We have a couple new members, so I'm going to give you a little bit of background on what the program was, how we developed some methodology, and how it's progressing, and how we're going to move into the future. So just a little background for those of you who are new to the committee and new to the board. Currently, we have 740 shelters throughout the system. We have over 5,100 stops. So we have a lot of assets out there that we are responsible for maintaining. We've had a period of time where we did not get any new shelters out into the system, probably 3 or 4 years since we put any new ones out there. And with with acquiring a new vendor and a new shelter that we're looking to put out, it was time for us to really put together a new deployment plan and have a good strategy on how we're going to put it out and make it most cost effective and the best way for the customers. So we really dove into an analysis of the condition and the importance of our shelters in the system and how they were operating for the riders themselves. So we did a really good background, really in conjunction with the Path Forward plan, which we really identified the importance of the shelters, obviously providing shelter from the elements and overall making a better experience for the riders, and also looking at the importance of it from a safety standpoint. Many of them have lighting as well. And then really understanding what is the current status of our shelters in the system. And we have a mix of very, very old shelters, and we have some relatively new ones that are in pretty good shape. But we found we were really at a crossroads where we were cannibalizing existing shelters to maintain the better ones in the system. So all of this really came about at a good time. We came out with a distribution strategy, and again, this was really in parallel with the Path Forward program, where we're focused on maximizing this impact on customer needs, improving the experience, answering the needs of the customers themselves. But something we haven't necessarily done in the past is really creating partnerships with the communities and working in conjunction with their redevelopment plans, their projects in their municipalities, and this extends to the county and the state level as well. And being a part in the design process and the future plans and making sure they understand that they have high ridership needs in these areas, and when they're doing their projects, to make sure that they take transit into account. So that's really kind of the background on where the program came from as we're moving forward. We had a phase 1 order of 34 shelters, I believe, that the board approved in July of last year. The deployment schedule for that is we will begin putting them on the street after the downtown St. Petersburg redesign. Kind of everything's focused on that right now. In December, the board approved our outsourcing of an installation vendor, and we will start seeing these shelters here. If you didn't see it on the way in and you haven't seen it before, definitely when you walk out the front door, it's right there on the left. It's really nice. We're really excited to get them out there. That is going to be the standard 4x8 shelter. That will be the most common you see out there, but we do have varying sizes.
Say, when it's dark enough outside, the solar lighting kit comes on. Just
Really?
Yeah, I came in yesterday morning and the light was on. It's cool. Nice, really nice modern looking LED lighting. It's great. So
Yes, Commissioner.
So Chris, is that that's our standard shelter?
This is really, the 4x8 size is really kind of the standard that you see most often on the street. We have 4 different sizes. At the big transfer stations, we'll have 8x12. So we have a 4x12, which will be the same depth, but it'll be 12 feet long, and we have a 2x8 as well.
And they all have the solar lighting?
They all have the options for solar lighting.
Okay.
When we go out and we look at locations, there are locations with lots of lighting where, it might be better spending that additional amount for that on another shelter.
This is smart approach.
Yeah, we definitely take that into account.
And finally, do you have a wind rating on this?
We do. These are all built to the new FDOT codes. I believe it's Category 3, but it meets the state standards.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So just to give a review, our phase 1, we got the rest of our order in a week and a half ago. So they're all here. They're down in facilities. They will be assembled and distributed as we presented to you. Most of these here, again, are the really big, high-profile, high transfer, high ridership locations. You'll recognize most of them as our transfer stations. So we're definitely very excited to get those out on the street. And again, most of these were just focused on high ridership stuff. Our phase 2 recommendations that we have here, we've identified 34 more shelters, and this is an important one because really in focusing on the high ridership locations, we identified and we presented to you, we had some discussion about this and some gaps in having shelters at locations where there were more than 40 people boarding a day. A lot of that was due to right-of-way restrictions. We have some designs that have addressed that. But about half of these shelters, maybe a little bit more, will fill in those gaps. After we get this phase 2 ones out there, there will no longer be any stops with 40 or more boardings a day that do not have either a new shelter or one of our old ones where right-of-way is available. So that's a big accomplishment for us to have been able to fill in those gaps, and definitely something you all were concerned about as we moved forward in this. But in part of this phase 2 here, we started to work in some of the community development plans. Largo is a great example. We've had a long-time partnership with them. Largo buys their own shelters and puts them out, and we've always partnered with them to take possession of them. We will assemble them and we will install them for them, and they will buy the shelters themselves. So in working with them, they have 2 down in our facilities now. We have a couple locations we're going to put out there for them. So that's part of that community partnership where now we're putting 4 shelters out there together. And another good representation of this community development up in Dunedin on the 580 corridor. This will work into the stop consolidation that we've mentioned in the past. We've identified several locations in sort of preliminary analysis where stop consolidation would make sense, where you're taking 2 stops with marginal ridership, putting them together and creating a much better stop where there'll be higher ridership, but we will improve the amenities at that location. So it's a good mix here. We're starting to be able to move into meeting some of the other goals in this program and extending just beyond meeting the high ridership needs. Moving forward into the future, we're looking at implementing the Shelter Match program this spring. We've worked with Commissioner Dighton and the Big C and getting this idea out to the beaches, and there's been some great feedback from them on what they might like. And really this amounts to us partnering with the cities to be able to basically split the cost 50-50 of what we would pay for a comparable shelter. And if they want some customizations beyond what we would pay, you know, we work with them to make that happen. And we will provide a RFP that will allow that process to happen through PSTA and be able to use our federal dollars a lot more effectively. Shelter repurposing, we will now be able to put out new shelters at some locations. If that shelter that exists there is still in good condition, we'll find another place for it in the system. Hopefully to start pushing out some of those really bad condition shelters. Stop consolidation, as I mentioned, in the Dunedin area, that'll be a big part of the October stuff that we have coming up. And again, just continuing to maintain that momentum that we had out of the referendum and maintaining those relationships with the communities, building them stronger, and just coordinating with them as they move forward in their own plans. In the existing agency coordination, the MPO, the county, the state, we're fortunate where they're very good at contacting us, and anytime they do a roadway project, they're required by law to put in any ADA pads that aren't there. And part of that, they're very good about, if we want a bus shelter pad, they'll put a bus shelter pad there at no cost to us. So that's a coordinated effort that we're very involved in too. Any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris, great presentation. A couple of questions. What's the average cost for a shelter?
They vary greatly. We have that 4x8 costs about $5,700 for the shelter, but we've incorporated a full cost for installation with concrete pads poured, an average cost of ADA. We put in trash cans, bench. It runs about $10,000 to $12,000.
And as we talked about before, this is, I think, one of the biggest needs in terms of customer service that we have. The threshold of 40. Have we looked at, lower thresholds? 30.
That's the lower threshold.
Huh?
It was 50.
Yeah, we've
And
already
we lowered it to 40.
Okay. Have we looked? When I drive and I see folks standing up, or it just.
It's tough.
Yeah. So even just a little, what do you call those side things where folks can sit
Yeah,
down?
seats.
Even that helps set us on the standard. So I'm just wondering, are we looking at expanding it beyond
Look
the
for
700?
warrants.
When we're looking at benches, we look at benches at like 10 to 15 people a day. Semi seats is something we're continuing to looking at putting out. The shelters, we lowered it down to 40. You know, when we start looking at the feasibility of budget availability and that sort of thing, 40 is a very good number that makes it a reasonable milestone for us to reach. If you get down into the 30s, into the 20s, we have so many stops right now. Right now it's a very good milestone. We reached that milestone now, and we can start looking at how we might, with the shelter match program, we can start looking at opportunities to partner and putting shelters where we wouldn't put them normally. So, we do have these thresholds for putting in benches and semi-seats as well.
Well, could you send that to us? I know we're running out of time, but could you send me the thresholds for benches or the semi-seats? Because I just think customer, and cost, including maintenance or cleaning. But I think in terms of customer friendliness, it's vital.
One of the things that we're looking at, and Chris alluded to it in the stop consolidation in Dunedin, is during our October service change, we'll look at every single route. And we're looking at stops that are close together, that if you combine them, they would meet those thresholds. And then, so you do two things. One is you speed the service because you have fewer stops, and then you create a better wait experience. And so we're trying to make more stops fit into those thresholds as well.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Thank you. Two questions. One is about the plan that we're talking about. Is the goal, part of it at all, a goal to actually get rid of any of the shelters that are not covered? To eventually have all shelters, or all stops be shelters? That would be the right way to say it.
In an unconstrained world, that would be great. But that's not at all a reasonable goal for us to go for. That's not something we could ever do. It's just too cost prohibitive.
Okay, but potentially with a program that you're talking about in the future plans of up here, of a match program or something of that nature, it could be to have a goal, like if each city had their own goal of how many they wanted to see in their city. Of that sort.
Right. Yes. So we're creating that match program so that we can, one, advance some of our replacements, and then two, increase the number of shelters. And if a city wanted a shelter at a location that had 30 people per day, and that doesn't meet our warrant, but they are willing to pay for half, then we can work with the city on those kinds of things. Yes.
Okay. And two, can you explain signage, maybe in the shortest time possible, in the shelters, if that is, I've heard that come up before, and in commission for ourselves.
I believe every
advertising.
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 Yeah.
That is a whole separate issue, and that's really. We have a contract, a vendor that we contract with, Signal Outdoor. I know you all have talked about it recently, and we help them find locations that are good. We provide them with some obviously data on where our routes go, and theirs isn't necessarily ridership based. It's how much traffic is going by. But they're really constrained by ordinance. That's it. If there's a signage code that prevents them from being in a city, that's the only reason they're not going to be there, which is the case with Largo right now. We went in and asked them about changing the advertising in there, and it's become
Pinellas County is very limited in geographic to areas that permit by ordinance advertising shelters. There's no advertising shelters in St. Petersburg, and I believe in Largo and Clearwater it's capped at basically what they already have. We have this contract with Signal. It's a company called Signal Outdoors, and they also have the contract over in Hillsborough County. Hillsborough County is wide open, so they are massively changing over all of their non-advertising shelters to advertising shelters. it's a benefit to the transit authority because they, or someone, because they make revenue, they get revenue, but in Pinellas County, it's minimal. I think there's only like 50?
There's like 65 now.
65 shelters.
We share revenue with them, so it's a revenue source for PSTA.
Sometimes nonprofits are advertised on benches for a certain time, so that's.
Bench advertising is totally separate.
Yeah, but that's not.
Just so you know, if you ever see a bench out there with advertising on it, there's nothing to do with PSTA. They put it there because there's a bus stop there, and it's called JC. And you know, they have their own issues with that. If it's not cemented to the ground, it is not.
It's a company called Metro Bench, and they partner with nonprofit organizations like the Brothers and Sisters or the Junior Chamber of Commerce or JCs, and then they share in the revenue with that nonprofit. So it says a project of the Brothers and Sisters, but it's actually Metro Bench.
Okay. Commissioner Johnson.
Just real quick, we've been very fortunate, Pinellas Park, in working with developers, and when they want to develop something, kind of mention to them that it might be nice if they built like the very first slide that you have, and it's all brushed aluminum. Do you know which one I'm talking about? It's all solar, and it has, you know, all that.
That's it right here.
Okay, and that'll be there forever. But that was part of a huge development, and it is there. So kind of sneaking that in helps a whole lot. And then we're looking at CRA money to invest in sharing, so we can have, we don't have the sign problems. We can put anything on we want. So for us, it's an advertising medium for our city, but CRA money is available. That helps.
Brad, could you give us some numbers that PART generates from shelter ads?
Yeah.
Okay, we're about 5 minutes past our time here. Are there any other questions and comments? If you'll see that we have some future meeting subjects coming up, Chris Cochran's next presentation on service, the service redesign phase 3, our sustainability plan, our updates on the Central Avenue BRT, the bus shoulder running plans, SEIU labor agreement, and we're going to hear an update on our bus technology options. So that's all on our radar screen coming up. And any other business? Brett, I just had one question. I know that we have a really big agenda coming up at the end of January, but I was wondering if at some point we could kind of check in and get an update on where we are with the Williams Park redesign. That probably doesn't need to be a very long report, but just, you know, are we on track? Because that's a big change coming up in February. Just like to kind of hear where we're at.
We're on track.
We're totally on track.
Okay.
We meet weekly with all of the departments in the agency, and everybody's on fully out there, pedal to the metal on everything that they're doing. So the public outreach team has all of their days scheduled, training for us. We've invited the Transit Riders Advisory Committee to join us out there and be part of the training and part of the discussion with the public. Henry's team is fully engaged with the City of St. Petersburg for the shelter removal, which will happen January 30th. The transportation team is out there to make sure that the next 2 weeks in Williams Park go well, and then the transition to the new grid system, that all the signs are up and we're all ready to go. We have gone to every single business where there is a recovery location in the City of St. Petersburg. We've talked to the property owner at the location where the bus may have 5 to 10 minute end of the line recovery, and we're beginning to pull permits for those. So we've got everything going. And
Great.
so we have specifics. If you want to stay later, we can talk about
Bob gave a nice presentation for the track committee earlier this week, and we'll see if we can squeeze into the board agenda a little update on the 26th.
That would be great, because, I mean, that's really a great report, and it sounds like St. Pete's working really well with PSTA. So.
The city staff has been great.
Awesome.
As a follow-up, kind of align with that, with and Cassandra at our meeting Tuesday at the commission, when Mayor Priceman came and asked for the $350,000 for the ferry. I'd like to give just an update or a brief report on any impacts that will have on PSTA's downtown service, if any, and how we'll serve those folks once they get off the boat in downtown St. Pete. And as we're doing the downtown redesign, is that part of that? Or?
The services that go to the location that they're looking at for the ferry landing, we already serve, and we will continue to serve even after the redesign. The great thing about bus routes is we can move it if we need to. And if they came online and they started that service October 15th of 2017, then we would have our regular service change just about that time, and we could actually put that in place if we needed to have more routes go down there. We could absolutely do that.
Is it 17 or is it 0?
It's 16. Is it 16? Sorry.
Yes,
It's fiscal year 17.
Yeah.
Yes, it's October 15th, 2016. Yes.
So we're talking regular bus service or trolley service?
We have trolley service, which is one of our best services, and that's 15 minutes. That would be every 15 minutes out to that location to pick people up. And if they're running at 2-hour frequency, I'm pretty sure that we can align our schedule to come in at the same time.
Thank you.
And I spoke to the city staff this week about maybe trying to work out a fair, kind of a UPass feel for very coordination of the fairs.
Great.
Yes.
Great news moving forward. Okay, well, we adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Larissa, thank you for saving my life.
I'll
start.
I saw you pick up the thing, and
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like,
It's sad.
Map and our shelters have no advertising.